out to Hoops Jargon, man. I'm gonna add you to the crew, man. This crew called Hoops Jargon. They've been getting at it, man. They the ones that's gonna grill you, man, because they majority are all Houston people. So that's
shout out to Hoops Jargon. Shout out to
Hoops Jargon.
What's up, everybody, man? Shout out to Hoop Jargon, man. And I got a great show scheduled for you guys today, man. One thing I do like to do as the HBCU plug is put a lot of HBCU contact out. And what I want to do is put a lot of people in your living rooms, as it were. They have a bevy of knowledge on the phenomena, as we know, as HBCU sports. Me, a former athlete at Prairie View A&M University, I go hard for my school. And this happens to be a man who is very, very rooted in the HBCU world, who also is alumni of Prairie View A&M University now. And I'm going to bring him out with further ado. And that's going to be my frat brother, A5A all day, Mr. Kenyatta Cavil. So let me bring him on the stream real quick. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let them see that light. Let them see that light.
Let them see the light. A5A all day, man. How you doing, Kenyatta?
I'm doing well. How you doing? It's good to be on with you. Thanks for the opportunity to share my voice with your listeners. Doing
Absolutely.
Great work out there, and I really appreciate what you put on for folks.
I appreciate it, man. And to me, this is near and dear because, as you know, just like myself, HBCU sports doesn't always get the headline. And so I think this is an opportunity because everybody want to cover, what's going on right now. We'll get into what exactly they're talking about. But this is a great day to be an HBCU fan. So, yeah, y'all. So let's get it in.
Let's do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let's get it started the right way. Kenyatta, for those who are unfamiliar with your platform, can you let the audience know a little bit about who you are, what you do, your background, and so they can get more familiar about you, sir?
No doubt about it. The first thing I'll say is I am a professor at Texas Southern University. I lecture the program of sport management, which I actually had the opportunity to develop at the undergraduate level. That's a BS in sport management. At the graduate level is the MS in sports studies and sports leadership. And we have recently, starting literally this fall, will become the first HBCU that offers a doctoral concentration in sports education. We do it in conjunction with the doctor of education, I should say, in curriculum instruction. Well, that's enough of the academic side. Don't want to bore the listeners too much. But what I do on my platform is I cover HBCUs. So my research does HBCUs. So I said, let me take the research with people I have to do for the academy. Folks don't read it, but they do listen. And they want to know about athletics and sports and the team. So I developed a show called Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. More specifically, it's Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. And you can follow me on the social media platforms of Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And that's at Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, DrKenyattaCavil. The Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, we do a live show every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, as well as you can catch it late on a reprogrammed podcast just for listeners. It's Spreaker, or you can find it on YouTube if you want to get the visual framework of it.
Perfect. And yeah, so well, I got to give you the first person to have me take my little YouTube logo off because I want everybody to see that logo you got, man, for the HBCU Sports Lab, man. So you set a new precedent on the show off rip, man. Appreciate you, y'all.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir, man. So on this channel, man, it's all about promoting other people's platforms and sharing your knowledge so, your fan base grows. We're not here doing this for nothing, man. We're doing this for y'all to enjoy what's going on right now. So, Kenyatta, man, so what made you start your platform, HBCU Sports Lab? Did you see like a need for it, or what was your whole reasoning for starting this up?
Certainly the latter part of it was the opportunity to have a need for it. But like many people, I just started as really a fan. I won't go too back in history because it might show my age. But when I started working, there was a platform out there called Onadon, and then TSPN that became HBCU Sports now, and before that was TSPN Sports as well. And you're familiar with that. Well, I
Yes.
saw the poll ranking, and I saw what we would become now is a need in the marketplace. And you had the old Sheridan poll that would mix in Division II HBCU football programs with what is now FCS, formerly 1AA football programs. So what does that mean? You had programs like Tuskegee, Winston-Salem State, Bowie State, Virginia State now that were mixed in with Southern, Grambling, Prairie View, Texas Southern, FAMU, North Carolina A&T, Howard. And I thought that it was more convenient and more marketable if you had two different poll rankings. So I did one poll ranking for Division II and NIA programs such as Langston that I called a mid-major poll, and then I did a major division poll that did all the FCS, basically the teams out of the MEAC, SWAC, and at the time Tennessee State, and now it would be independent programs such as Hampton and North Carolina A&T. So long story short is I saw a need in the market, put it out there, and then I got my big break, a legendary radio person that you're familiar with out of Houston when you played down there at Prairie View right outside of Houston. It was Ralph Cooper.
Yes.
A legend in those places. And he heard me doing a breakdown of my poll rankings at Texas Southern University with the legendary Chatterbox with his voice.
Chatterbox,
I was from somewhere else, right? And he said, "Can you do that for me?" I said, "Yeah, I'm right here in Houston." So he told me to come into the station. And so I started doing it in the station, learning and finding all the tricks of the trade, if you would. And he thought I was decent enough that he had to make an emergency trip. He put me on the air, and I fell in love with it and being with in terms of radio. And the radio turned into a podcast. The podcast turned into a streaming platform. And here I am with you doing the same thing that you're doing in terms of giving people what I call inside the HBCU Sports Lab news, updates, and more from the HBCU sporting diaspora.
There we go. That's a pretty wide frame. I like how you call it diaspora at the end. That's what's up. So yeah, man, it's a big thing. And you know what's funny? When I played, we used to look at the SWAC polls and the HBCU polls, and we would always wonder who was there. You know how it went down the SWAC page. Whoever was ranked, man, it was bragging time and all that. So and go with me a little bit about what the community does to get those polls together. You know, from a validity standpoint, because everybody always want to argue in every poll. So what kind of goes into the making of the HBCU poll? That's
a great question, an important one. Thank you for asking it. Most times when you look at these polls, what they do is you have your preseason prediction, which are the coaches and the SIDs. And so they put out a predictive poll of who's going to finish or what they think people will finish at the end of the season. So that's one format you see. And then these poll rankings, which I talked about the Sheridan, which literally goes back to the 1920s when you had the Pittsburgh Courier, a Negro newspaper, as they call it at the time, basically a black newspaper of what we refer to today, African-American newspaper, if you would, whichever term you prefer to use. And so fast forward, you have the same thing. You have people that will take people that follow HBCU sports. I'm talking about people that follow it like a religion. People that cover them all the time, tell you about players and names, stats and things. And so they will vote in the poll. You have some polls that will integrate coaches also during the season, just like you see with the AP poll when you talk about what I refer to as historically white colleges and universities. It's the same format. It just happens to be black newspapers, folks that focus and cover HBCU sports that votes in it. Now, one thing that's different about the ranking that I do is I put a algorithm in there, a database that looks at home and away games, margin of score, victory, and things of that nature to come out with a ranking versus just a voting poll.
And I think that's important to have a standard. And because as you know, in the HBCU world, it's always a big problem when people say let me say SWAC in particular. They say, oh, man, it's always Grambling, always Southern, always Jackson. So it's good to see that there's an actual process that is indiscriminate of popularity going on with the process. And that's why I asked the question to prove the validity of your service, man. So it's really good to know that that's what goes into it and not just, all right, let me look down who got the win-loss record, who's here, and then you just place them on there as we know some people do. We won't call no names out, but it is what it is.
Exactly. But that's why I'm so glad that you asked that question, because that is one thing that was important to me. I've been literally cheering you on for a long time when you were on the hardwood in terms of being a basketball player, putting your blood, sweat, and tears in Prairie View A&M University. So
Yes,
I'm
sir.
a fan from that perspective. And then I grew to see you go to the sideline and do some coaching, and now you take off of that. So I've seen your literal growth as a young
That's true.
man until literally a man, and what you're doing for the voiceless in a lot of ways. So that is extremely important. But I will have to admit this, that just like the AP poll rankings, so don't get it twisted. All these folks try to act like because they're more branded than other programs that their polls are having more validity. They have the same bias. I'm a professor. I know about validity and construct validity, reliability. I can get real ugly in here if we want to. I won't bore you. I'm just letting you know I have some skills, and I know that. There's a reason that they allowed me to get out of their program with the doctor. But when you do that in that perspective, you still have some bias that you come to the table. Your job is to pull that bias out. But voters come with bias. They like the well-branded schools. It's a reason why Alabama is ranked at the top. Not only because they have a good, solid program, but there's also a lot of bias within that. It's a reason why you have some programs that start very high, but when they hit the turf or the basketball hardwood or baseball turf, softball, if you would, not to be gender biased, you see some teams fall because when the rubber hits the road, they have to get it done and they can't get it done. So there's always going to be bias in there. So that's just a fact of life.
And I love how transparent you are, because, one thing is that with the average fan always accuses is a poll system or whatever, as far as where there has to be an evaluation that there are biases in it. If you don't believe me, look at your local football game, your local basketball game, and tell me ask those referees how well they're received by the people who are watching the game. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I think the transparency of your process is a very important thing, because people go, oh man, they cheating, oh they just put them, because they got to understand, okay, yeah, there may be a level of bias, however, there is literally a process. So in any and everything in this world, guys, nothing is fail proof, and I just wanted to let that be out. And I didn't even plan for that question, but when you talked about it, automatically I'm thinking how an average fan would think. And for y'all who think I didn't play, hey, this is the man right here. Kenyatta has seen me play since I was about 21 years old. I'm 37 now, so I've been knowing this man for 16 years. And then again, becoming a part of the same fraternity, man. So y'all know I ain't on here capping. This man has seen me put in work, and so it is what it is, man. So I got it's a question off script. Because one thing I did notice is you always took to me from a younger age. What kind of person would you describe me as, like a basketball player, as an athlete, in your opinion? I'm just always curious about how people view what I did, because I did it in my own space mentally, but I wonder how other people received it.
One of the things that I appreciated about your game, I get tired of the old trope that just talks about people being hustlers. You know what I'm saying? That's a given. Athletes, all for the most part, put in a lot of time and energy. Just because we're not in practice, we don't see it. The sweat and the tears that you put in there. I think sometimes as fans, we can get lazy and we get these tropes where we talk about folks that are very hardworking. But besides that, because you put in that time and energy, one of the things I really appreciated about your game is how much thought process I thought you put in there. The intellectual part of the game that I saw you always come to the table with, I really appreciated. Not making a lot of mental mistakes was extremely important to a fan like myself, that I could appreciate it, because I knew that people are going to work hard. May I want some people to maybe work a little harder than others? Yeah, you can do that. But again, I think there's some bias in that. We allow the media to take over people's persona, and then we put them in this space and we stick to it, whether we become super fans of them or people that we do not like. So for me, to really put a pin on it, just your intellectual capability of participating in such a sport like basketball. Because basketball is one of the unique sports where a referee almost on multiple plays make what you call judgment call.
For sure.
Charge block, right? The travel, some of these things like that. They're instantaneous and they're bang bang plays that can go in either way.
Absolutely.
So you really have to be a student of the game to master it at a certain level that you can play college. And then you talk about playing Division I college. You're one of the best of the best. And then obviously we get to the super elite when you play professionally, whether it's overseas, and then you come back and play at what I am a fan of, the #1 game in the NBA, and not even talking about those literally superstars or phenomenal players that literally, as Magic would say, make their game during the season, but make their name during the playoffs. It's something special about that.
And I like that because in all honesty, when I came to Prairie View, I was not a high recruit per se, but I mean, I put my work in junior college to deserve a scholarship. So I knew when I went up against some of the better guys in conference that I knew I wasn't. Now I was very athletic, but I wanted to outthink people, and that's literally how I played. I was very unselfish. I didn't care about me. I want us to win. Now, it ain't always translate to wins. I had other teammates with different motives. It is what it is, but I'm glad there.
But to say, not to jump in there, because I think it's important. Coming a fan of Prairie View, that know the history that goes back to the day in the NAIA, where the university with Zelmo Beatty actually won a national championship. People don't realize that. Right?
Absolutely.
60. In the NAIA, they won a championship. But then we fell on hard times, where we literally had this losing streak. You are part of the architecture that gets this program now where it is perennial in terms of the expectation is winning championships. So without the foundation that you put in there in terms of galvanizing fan support, putting us in a position to know that we could do better and could have those wins, you are the architect for that. So never forget that in regards to, as I talk about the legend as a group of people, African Americans and Black, the diaspora, is we stand on the shoulders of giants. It is about our collective memory that is extremely important. And if we fail to understand our history and the memory, right, looking at the social construct, how do we relate and measure each other versus the governing structure, what the European components put to us in a certain space, it can be dangerous. And it's not saying that one is better than the other, but it's also saying being different is not deficient.
I like that, man. And so with people like yourself, it made me take more pride in being an alum, as I finished. And I saw, like you say, the group after me do so well. When guys got like Darnell Huger, who would have won the college slam dunk contest if he's been in it, because he actually won one that Daryl Dawkins judged in New York, the Sprite contest, and he won it. And I think he won SWAC Player of the Year his junior year. Yeah, so
boy.
Yeah, and Darnell was in. He was coming in the program when I was leaving, and me and Darnell are still good friends to this day. And so to watch him to where it is now, when Coach Smith took the program over to now, PV has taken a big slate up. But I do take pride of when I played, again, knowing that we had an uphill battle every year. I knew that we had work to put in, as it were. But to get to play against guys like Mikael Gladys, who went on to play for the Miami Heat and the Golden State Warriors, to play against guys like Trey Johnson, who were number 2 in scoring his senior year, which is my senior year, 06-07, going against Adam Morrison. He averaged like 28 points a game or something like that. And me playing against Jackson was got me overseas, you know what I mean? And so I appreciate the whole process of being a part of the collective, man, even though, Prairie View don't get the most love, and I understand that. But I feel privileged to be a part of it. And especially when you go home to homecoming, it's like, man, I did that. I met I met a member of the team in 1972. Gentleman, man, I forget his name, but it's just like, it's crazy. I'm a part of the same fraternity as that man right there. At an unassuming 21-year-old on my third school, but just like Prairie View was home, man. And so, I really appreciate people like yourself has always kept up with me over the years to keep instilling that pride, man. So I do have to say that.
No doubt.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, man. We get flowers over here, Hoop Jargon, man. You put the work in, and you something that you, especially if you pour it into me personally, I never forget. I'll never forget what people said to me. I promise you, because as I know, I wasn't the best player on the team. I was about middle of the pack, but everybody who appreciated my game had something to it. And the recently departed Mike Yup, he used to always have something positive to say about me playing basketball, man. And so, you remember Mike? Yep.
Yep. No doubt.
Yeah, man. He crazy. If y'all don't pray, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. Big, tall, light-skinned, old guy, man. He's crazy. That boy said the first thing that comes to his mind every time. So, so I do appreciate stuff like that. So, okay, so Kenyatta, so we talked about the service, and we talked about the way you come up with the HBCU rankings. Let's start with last year. Are you surprised about the results from the spring league for the SWAC season in football, that is?
No, I wasn't necessarily surprised. I was with a great deal of anticipation. I just knew COVID-19, you throw everything out the window. And we'll get a chance, obviously, probably a little later in the show to talk about this season. And I think to some way that's the same case. There's just so many variables involved when you talk about COVID-19. So it didn't surprise me from that standpoint. I will say this, though. As you know, I cover HBCU sports. So I remember Maynard. In fact, I have a backstory. I remember when Maynard was at Winston-Salem State when he came and interviewed for a job at Texas Southern University for their head football coaching position. So I got a chance to talk to him very early, and I was following, keeping up with the record. They made a semifinal run the year before he did the interview, and then after he did the interview and didn't take the job because they gave it to Asbury, he took him to the NCAA Division II championship. First time for a Division II football program, HBCU-wise, to get that far. And so I knew he was talented. So my expectation that he was going to get the Bulldogs right at some point. So from that perspective, I was even less surprised when you started seeing him going on that run. And then you talk about Akil Glass. Akil Glass, before he got there, was a solid quarterback. He's a quarterback in himself, a quarterback guru, as I like to tell him, quarterback coach. So I knew he was going to get Akil Glass right. And Akil Glass has even become better than advertised.
Absolutely.
He is a gentleman that you can watch for in terms of folks that look at HBCU players. He's going to get a chance to play on Sundays. So watch out for Akil Glass.
I was just going to mention that. I'm like, if it's a name that has an opportunity to play on Sundays, it's definitely going to be Glass, man. And it's good that he delivered because he had the hype going before the season, and he delivered. I mean, as we know, they overcame, Jackson State, and with the famous game with the noise talking beforehand, and we know how that shook out, man. Which I love that. Y'all gotta understand, man. The SWAC is that's what the SWAC is, man.
Yeah. It got boring for a little while because the coach got so professional.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, they would come in and they give y'all the coach stuff. You go back when you had Eddie Robinson on those buses with a lot of these famous coaches, and they used to take a bus tour, and they would literally get off the bus talking noise about what they were going to do to the other team, and it galvanized the interest of people that became fans of the SWAC. And that's what they expected, that this would be a colorful pageantry, a lot of talk, entertaining, and they changed the game. There were things that they did with Coach Cooley, Archie Cooley, what he did, what ultimately led to the San Francisco 49ers. He began it. He started all that. You talk about the Veer splits at Grambling in terms of how they changed the running game, right? And so you have Moreno Castle in terms of what he did at Southern and Alcorn. These individuals not only sent a lot of players to the pros, but they changed the game in terms of how they played it, how they schemed it. The schematics they did within the games were different and far outreaching. And in a lot of ways, there are things that you see today in terms of the modern game that they were doing in the SWAC at the time. So it's fascinating when you talk about all that. And those are some of the things I love about the SWAC. But to take it back also to the spring, one team I must admit that I was surprised with, the Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions.
Yeah.
I knew they were trending in the right direction the year before. They had a big win over Tennessee State. They had a losing season. They went to 500, a winning season. So you knew they were on that rise. And Pine Bluff happens to be a team that you see every 4 or 5 years that they're going to be in a position to make some headaches and make a run at a championship. And they did that in the spring. A lot of people think that they're going to go right back down. I think this is a team with Coach Doc Gamble that is going to stay in the hunt. The one thing about the SWAC with the 12 members now, it is deep. It is as deep as ever. And you literally have 5 division that can win.
No, that's facts. And shout out to Margarita. There you see, I'm just listening. You have no idea. So you're gonna understand what this is. and that's good. I want people who don't naturally listen to HBCU sports to take this in, because this is something you're going to be more familiar with. And you are the kind of people I'm exactly making this video for. And I do appreciate you being here listening. And and to your point, I remember just watching guys like Melvin Spires, man, from I think he was at Grambling at the time, how he put the suits on and come in with all the bravado, man.
With the glasses, shades on.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that he had, a slant eye. So he wore glasses to protect him, but it was also, he did it as an image as he was cool, and he would use it to recruit and everything. But he had this persona. So you're right, man. These cats, when you talk about marketing and branding, you see at the NFL, they ain't have nothing on these.
Nothing on the swag. How many coaches you see in a three-piece suit on the sideline in a HBC or at a college football game?
Yeah, you go to Bethune-Cookman. They out of the MEAC, but now a member of the SWAC. Obviously, as you know, you had a coach called Coach Shine, and many people used to talk about he was the best dressed. You remember in the league, Mississippi Valley's coach.
Yeah. I forgot what's his name. They shot him threes.
Yeah, man, he would come with the cleanest suits out there, different
colors.
And he would be like, nobody's going to outshine me on the sideline. And the man could coach. That was so funny. And he running zeros around you in his Valley Delta Devils, dunking and slamming all over you, stealing the ball and making you look silly. And you over there talking about, look at the coach. On the court.
You know what? And that was kind of my point I was going to make too. I'm glad you brought it back. So you always got to watch those schools.
Coach Stribbling.
Strib. Yeah. And that's a great point, man. You got to watch them teams that are out there. There's nothing else to do but focus on sports, man. At any given moment, you can have a Pine Bluff just roll on you. Have a Valley just roll on you. Because, Valley's been down for a little minute. But I remember when I was a senior at Prairie View in football wise, man, Valley was whooping our ass, man. Like we couldn't do nothing with them. We couldn't do nothing with Valley. But I do remember years after when I started coaching at Prairie View, Valley had some recruits. That was the year after we won the SWAC title with KJ Black being at the head. I remember the recruits at the hotel we were at, they were like, man, I hate it out here. Man, can y'all hook us up with y'all coaches? I remember that on their official visits, they were asking us because, it's like 09, 2010 range. PV was on the up, you know what I mean? And so, your football team, when your program ups, it just, football's king.
About it, yeah. When your football team, there's something about it. It galvanized the rest of the sports.
Absolutely.
Started trending in the right direction. I remember going to Birmingham. It was cold, but you talk championship. KJ Black showed up and showed out. Man, he brought it home for us, and now he's a assistant coach, quarterback coach, and offensive coordinator at FAMU. So it's going to be fascinating when he comes in and plays Prairie View for that matchup. He's certainly grooming himself to be a coach in the waiting, and I deem that he will be a head coach in this league in the SWAC. And I wouldn't be surprised when Dewar wins some championships down there and he decides to move to a different direction, that KJ Black will be one of those folks that we need to look at about taking over the ship, coming home.
Absolutely, man. And that's a perfect segue to what I was going to bring up next, which is our new additions to the SWAC. That's something that's been discussed a long time, and then the hammer finally got dropped last year, and now we got Bethune-Cookman. We have FAMU University in there, which is, especially FAMU, a very big program that's going to rival the Big Three. Y'all know the Big Three. I ain't got to go through that again. So what's your opinions about the new extension that we got to the SWAC? First, did you see it coming? And two, what are your thoughts that now it's come to fruition?
Well, you have to be fair. I didn't talk about this, but I also do consulting work with HBCU programs, consulting with head coaches, athletic directors, and the commissioner, who formerly was an athletic director, or what they also call the vice president of intercollegiate athletics. So I was working with him with some questions. So yes, I had some insight that it was coming, but at that time it was my job not to be on the media side, but on the consulting side. So I had to keep it proprietary. So I didn't let it out. But it was still one of those things that it was hard to believe until it happened. You waited with bated breath. I actually watched the board of Regents meeting, and it was one of those things that because of COVID, that it was streamed live. So everybody watched it. It was huge. Were they actually going to vote and make this happen? in terms of FAMU came in. And, you heard every indication that it was going down, it was going to happen. But, you didn't want to count your eggs before they hatched, if you would allow me to use that framing of it. So it was fascinating when you see it in so many different ways of what took place with FAMU. And to circle back to the first part of your question, it was huge. It is a brand of the magnitude, for those that may be more familiar with the brand recognition. It would be similar to what you're seeing with OU and UT going to the SEC. It is one of the biggest brands out there. If you use that term that a lot of people talk about these brands in terms of a blue blood, FAMU is a blue blood.
Absolutely.
Southern and Jackson. Tennessee State may be the other. Basically, that's it. Some people may argue North Carolina A&T, but they really have done it sporadically and as of late. South Carolina State, you may kind of sleep in there, but it slipped a little bit. Howard, because of the Mecca and the brand, but they haven't done it on the field. Basketball hard court really in such a long time. So when you look at the quintessential football brands, that's pretty much it when you talk about it. So it was huge when that announcement was made that you got the biggest brand out there to come in and connect with the brand. So if you allow me to put the business professor side of this is what we call on the business side, those that follow it, a merger or acquisition. I would look at it more of a merger because you have the brand of the SWAC, which consists of these branded institutions, and I named a few of them, merging with this other brand, if you would, in terms of FAMU. And so when you put that together, you really get a groundswell of excitement that you haven't seen, I say, going back to the SWAC in the 1958 when Jackson State and Grambling State joined the SWAC coming out of the Midwestern Conference in the 50s.
That's a huge statement, man, because that definitely molded the conference to where it is now. And that is a huge thing, too, because also rumored in this whole little shift of conferences that we kind of see, and that's kind of in vogue right now, is, the Southland Conference having these breakoffs. And as you know, in those groups, at TSBN Sports, it get a little wild with the acclamations. The accusations of what's going to happen. And so let me ask you this. One thing was rumored for a long time is that Prairie View was going to go over to the Southland Conference. Obviously, that never metastasized. But as we look forward, there's rumors again because Stephen F. Austin left, because Sam Houston State left. Do you think there's any merit to that thing that TSU and Prairie View would be new initiates to the Southland Conference with the situation going with FAMU and Bethune-Cookman coming to us?
I can kill that right here. That's not going to happen. And the reason not going to happen, it literally doesn't make business. It doesn't make sense. First of all, the first thing is there may have been a chance that you can make some arguments travel-wise. Southland, to me, is a one-bid league. They do get higher seedings in terms of the basketball league. They go to the playoffs. The SWAC plays for the Celebration Bowl. But there was no money in the Southland. And the bigger branded schools, when you compare it with Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston State, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lamar to some degree, and then lately Abilene Christian. Those teams left the Southland and went to the WAC. They were not happy of the business that were taking place in the Southland Conference. So why would these HBCUs go to the Southland? Essentially what you do with anything, you saving it. But you wouldn't be going over there for any other reason. Let me put a couple of things on the table because I like to deal with facts. You have $1 million associated with the Celebration Bowl. And I'm saying it was previous about $750 when they did the deal extended it for 6 more years. It went up to essentially at least a minimum of $1 million. Some people are saying 1.5. And 75% goes back to the institution. The rest goes to the conference. So you're talking about right out $1 million, and you can add revenue if you sell your tickets, because you get to keep your ticket sales that you sell on your campus as part of the money you make for that bowl game. So that's financial money. The Southland doesn't have that money. You talk about the playoffs. The playoffs, you looked at Eastern Washington and went to the playoffs. They had a meeting with the board that they put all the numbers on the table. They had to borrow $250,000 from the university to pay for the cost differential that it cost to go to the playoffs. And this is when they went to the championship. They didn't win it, And so some people can say some branding associated with it, that would be good. But money-wise, you make no money. Then you talk about the fact in terms of travel. The conference is split into divisions. So there's no money saved associated with that when you look at it, that you're talking about that framework. So going to the Southland in multiple ways just doesn't make financial sense in terms of seeing Prairie View, Texas Southern, Southern, and Grambling for that matter. And then the SWAC is strong right now. The other thing that I put on the table is the basketball money, NCAA basketball money. The NCAA basketball money gives away about $1,003,000 per year over a 6-year rotating period where they return the money, right? Well, in the Southland Conference, the conference keeps all that money to put on all the other conference championship sports. The SWAC, over the last couple of years, they've returned a portion of that money to the team that has won the conference and goes to the NCAA. So they can at least pay for their trip, because people don't realize the NCAA makes you buy so many tickets. They make you pay for the trip. So they give you this money, but it comes out of your allocation fees. So if you don't have money from your conference, you're actually coming out of your budget to pay for that. And so when you look at this again financially, it doesn't make any sense in the world.
I like that, man, because you're being very demonstrative to it. You're not being opinionated. You're laying out, because this is information the average fan is not privy to. So when you start saying all these rumors, like we know how it can get in these HBCU streets.
I mean, people get excited about that, and that is one side of it. And you make the argument in terms of marketing, or again, some people will say socialization skills. This is a historically white college with this, or in a historically white conference. So it must be better. You know, it's white. Yeah. They must be better. They must be doing better. But when you strip all it down and you look at it, it's not the case. Even when you look at the academic programs, you got some strong academic programs in the SWAC, especially now that FAMU comes in. You have 3 doctoral research institutions. You have Texas Southern, Jackson State, and FAMU. And you have some on the rise in terms of Prairie View and Southern that are moving in that direction in terms of research dollars. You only have a few of those in the Southland Conference, none of them in Louisiana. So even from an academic perspective, yeah, we know how to have fun, and people talk about HBCUs, you know, in terms of party schools. And yeah, there is a cultural enrichment that you need to celebrate. But even when you look at the academic side of it, you strip all that away. And I'm talking about a published classification, the Carnegie classification that ranks all universities in these different categories: baccalaureate programs, low, mid, high-level master's programs, doctoral programs, low, mid, extensive. That's just the ranking. So I'm not telling you anything that you can't go and look at. I'm not making this up. I'm taking stratified data and telling you what it is.
Absolutely. And if you think all that's still not enough, go look up the numbers for FCS numbers for attendance at football games. All SWAC and HBCU schools for the most part. We dominate there.
Over 30 years. The SWAC is number one except for 1 year. And the 1 year they wasn't number one, there was a hurricane. It was called
So there you go. So from a number standpoint, and it's something that I had to kind of come to now. If it's the right conference, maybe it makes sense. I got it, but it's fine the way it is. I mean, it really is, man. What I'm more concerned about with a lot of HBCUs is just more personal promotion. And I think Deion, and we about to roll to Deion. I know y'all came to hear about the Jackson State Tigers, but one thing Deion I love just from the footballer side, that he's capitalized on the capitalistic aspect of being in sports, man. Like, because one thing I do have a problem with now, I ain't calling no names out alumni, that some people from my school in particular are not so big with change. We want to stay how it's been forever. And I think that in this age now, kids care about clout. Kids care about instant gratification. So we got to make sure we're capitalizing in that space, because it don't cost you nothing. You just got to put content out. That's all you got to do. It won't cost you anything. If you want to get a social media manager to have it more strategized, then yeah, but this is a big avenue that we need to take advantage of. And I think that's where the conference as a whole is going. And I think Deion is kind of setting that standard that everybody else is eventually going to have to meet in some capacity.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's another brand acquisition. When you talk about a super mega brand, as Coach Sanders, Coach Prime, as he likes to be called, none other than Deion, Neon Prime. He's a huge brand, and I took everybody back. If you go back in history and look at it, the most similar individual that you can talk about at that time was none other than Michael Air Jordan, right? Jeffrey Jordan. In regards to at a peak at the time, these individuals, Deion was higher ranked than Jordan was in terms of the ability to sell things when he was going with Nike as well as Pepsi, right?
Mm-hmm.
He switched over to Nike because he didn't like some of the things they did at the end, but because of that, because of where he was ranked. But I'm saying all that to let you know, you think about somebody that has stayed relevant in terms of being on television and being in the cutting edge and
Absolutely.
connected. There's nothing like that. And you bring that brand and you put it in the SWAC. That is significant. Now, obviously, you can always have concerns and things of that nature, but I think the bigger piece that you're grabbing onto is extremely important. The social media platforms. Think about NIL, name, image, and likeness. It is keeping the playing field in regards to just what we're doing here, to giving us a platform to go directly to the people. We couldn't afford this if we had the traditional manner of what we did, or it take us forever to get there in regards to what that looks like. So you're absolutely right in terms of social media. Let me give one more point in here to let you know, even financially, what this means. You make money off of social media, and you can equate social media directly to income, revenue.
Absolutely.
And in fact, there are programs out there. People may not realize that a social media person that does this for the NFL and NBA, they can make like 75 to 85,000 coming out of school. That's not bad money at the time. And let them become a manager over 3 or 4 people. They jump up to 115, 125 a year for doing just social media platforms. And remember, in a lot of ways, that's kind of a part-time job that you're doing over the season. And so it's some opportunities out there. So it is important for each of our institutions to understand why they need to take advantage of the social media platforms that are out there.
Absolutely. And I love the NIL mention. And before I do that, man, if y'all have not liked the stream yet, if you have not, because you reminded me about the social media aspect, I got to make sure I'm on it. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do that, man. We ain't out here doing it for nothing. And so you don't have to give me $1, but that like and subscribe situation, that will help me out a lot. So please take the time to do that. And I'll touch on NIL real quick before we talk about insights for next season. The NIL, yes, I mean, that's why you got guys like Master P's son, what's his name, Hersey? It's Hersey, Hersey going to Tennessee State. You got Shaquille's son going to Texas Southern. Like, so those are opportunities that, normally wouldn't be, in fruition. Now, a little bit of the social aspect of last year of the George Floyd incident kind of moved some of this forward, like guys like Mikey Williams, who's going to be top 5 in his class in 2 years, says he's considering HBCU. He's actually considering 5, actually. So this is, in whatever you want to attribute the change to, this is the time we got to strike on these instances to get these guys, these programs, to make these programs elevated to new levels. So I'm very excited in both sports that we have this to look forward for this next year. So, speaking of player kids, Deion Sanders being at the vanguard of the Jackson State Tigers, man, what is your insight? I think they're like right now the number 55th ranked recruiting class overall. And I think they just added a 4-star guy from Tennessee, so I know it's higher now. Man, what's going on with Jackson, man? Let's go ahead and attack the elephant in the room.
It's a lot of talent. On paper, it's going to be interesting to see how quick they can get it to come together. But when you talk about talent and ranking, I mean, obviously, you talk about historically, they didn't rank players back in there. But since they started ranking players over the last 20-some years, this is the highest class that you've seen from an HBCU. The most recent class, though, interesting, is what will take place in the Orange Blossom Classic. The year before that, the highest ranking was from FAMU. But to give you some indication with this Jackson State class, it beat out some places like Kansas State, Syracuse.
Oh, yeah.
Power 5 programs. It outranked them, to give you some indication of just how significant this recruiting class was, topped by Deion Sanders in terms of a 3-star. Some people would say that he probably would have had a 4-star if his name wasn't Sanders, in regards to some people not really liking the way that Deion carries his business in terms of Coach Prime. But with that being said, is it's like what I would say with all these. This is a great opportunity that it'll play out on the field. But in terms of pure talent they have, it's no they have it. But the problem you have is you have Alabama A&M with the Coach Maynard, as I talked about. He's recruited some nice transfers as well. I just told you about the ranking of FAMU. He's got in there and got some transfers. So that East Division is stacked. So those matchups are going to be fascinating. And then you just got the intrinsic part of the games. And you know this better than anybody playing the game. It's something about playing at home versus playing on the road. And you talk about Alabama A&M schedule. What I think about, well, coming in, two of their toughest games are at home. Jackson State for homecoming is at home, and FAMU is up on the hill in Alabama. And you know what it is like to play basketball there, but it's pretty good atmosphere for playing football as well.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think, and this goes with the thing with the SWAC, man. If you've never been to a SWAC competition that wasn't at a neutral site, man, it is nothing like going to somebody else's home and dealing with from the bus to the locker room, from the locker room to the playing area, man. You gonna catch that work, man. And it's psychological. It does something to you, man. And not to talk too much about my playing days, but I'm going to Grambling, man. It just was playing in that little old high school gym they had, Alabama A&M out there in Huntsville, man. It is something to be said about going to somebody else's campus and have to win a big game. And I think that that's something that we do got to recognize that, you know, in these following games that we got going, that's going to definitely play its part, man. I mean, we even talked about the band situation and stuff like that. Like, you do hear that stuff, man. When you playing and you're losing, especially I can make it personal. When we play the State Fair Classic every year. And when Grambling get going and they start hitting that song, they go, you'd be like, shit, here we go. Grambling got the best song to me. I would just call it, they got the best fight song to me. When they did, and I mean, we lost to Grambling my junior year, and they played it in that little small gym, and man, it was rough, man. I want to fight somebody, man. It was a really close game too, man. But so that's the thing I love about the SWAC, and that's the thing you guys who aren't so familiar with the conference are going to see, because we talk about a lot more TV coverage this year. So it's going to be a product you're going to see more in your living room. It's going to be more relevant. Because why? Because guys like Prime are going to put that in your face. And I love how his son has taken on that same persona, because, you know, the controversy. They asked him, you know, with the competition is like, and he keeps on referencing his practice. Like, I mean, it can't be no worse than practice, which is he lying? Is he lying? So what do you feel about Shador?
At least that's the attitude he's supposed to take.
Absolutely.
Now, some people will question whether that's one of the things that you're supposed to say, because people have different frameworks that you talk different. But it's certainly the pedigree of what he comes from is that they exude confidence coming out of that family. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you literally grew up with, some would argue, the best to ever do it. Certainly one of the best to do it at the cornerback position.
Absolutely.
In terms of being able to hold it down. And with that saying, so it's going to be fascinating when you talk about those matchups, as you said. Television-wise, 26 at this point from ESPN Family and Network, 26 SWAC conference games, if you would, will be played. And of those, it's going to be fascinating when you talk about those matchups of all those games that are going to be out there over the season. I can't wait because I'll be in the stadium for some live ones. And then when I can't catch them live, I'm certainly going to be watching them. And if that means that I'll be at home watching them or I'll be at the game streaming them, you can make sure that I'm going to be able to give the best of news because I'm going to watch it all.
Absolutely. And this is the year, man, for you to get on the wave. If you just a casual football fan, don't really have a team, man, the SWAC is going to be where it's at, man. It's going to be guys coming every night, I guess they don't play necessarily at night, but midday, whatever you want to say. Just, yeah, you can take them words and use it how you wish. However, it's going to be some very, very interesting storylines going on. I do want to talk a little bit about Prairie before we peace out. So we know Jackson's going to be Jackson. You know, Alabama A&M is going to be Alabama A&M. Grambling, there's a few questions. I do want to talk about Prairie View's quarterback situation, bringing Javon Pass in from Louisville. Now, I know he's a redemption guy, but, you know, a four-star guy's a four-star guy. Basically supposed to be Lamar Jackson's replacement. Didn't quite work that way. Had a great game against Bama, had a great game against Notre Dame, and then some injuries happened. So, man, what's your opinion about Javon Pass, man?
Let me
in
start.
Prairie View.
Do you remember? You talk about Grambling. Do you remember Kincaid?
I do.
Yes. Well, remember he was in some ways a redemption as well, coming out of University of Mississippi. I would say this is similar to that. Guess who was the coordinator for Kincaid?
Who's that?
Dooley. Dooley is at University. So you see where I'm tying all these nice bows and bringing it down the road. So he is a coach that's an offensive guru, no doubt about it. And so he can scheme just about anything. He had players that were first-time players last year in the spring that played in a couple of games, and he was putting up 30 points, 28-plus points, and he thought that they could have did better than that. So it's not going to take him much to be offensive. So if anybody can redeem this quarterback, I think it's Coach Dooley. So I have very little concern about the Prairie View A&M offense. I think where you may have some concern with Prairie View is on the defensive side. Obviously, you lose Story Jackson that transferred away, but you still have like 8+ returning starters. So that's going to be a very solid defensive, and this is another year within the system. So I got to believe that they should be okay on the defensive side in a lot of ways. But I think that's more of the question mark. And then some of the other teams that you look at over there, you got Alcorn that has been the champ of the Eastern Division 5 years straight. Last couple of years, they come over, so you got to keep an eye on them. The problem and concern, if I was an Alcorn State fan, is not so much the talent you have back, but you have 6 road games. Think about that. I don't care what league you're playing in. 6 games on the road of your 8 is tough. And then now in this reconfigured SWAC, that is unheard of. Southern is always going to be very solid, but you have a new coach coming in there. So it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of factors that may play in terms of Southern. And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff was a couple of plays away from winning the spring championship. This is a solid team. Yes, they lost some players through the transfer portal, but they still have Skyler, the quarterback. They have a linebacker that roams sideline to sideline that can play with some of the best in the country. So that's a solid team. So what I'm saying here is that the SWAC is deep. So if you really are into the culture and want to see some exciting football, look at it, because the teams are 5 deep in each division. And what will make it worse, the teams that you may not think that are very good have gotten better too, which is Mississippi Valley on the east and Texas Southern on the west. Those are teams, if you're not careful and you're not bringing your lunch pail and think you're just going to put it down and hide it, they're going to take it from you.
Absolutely. And we know it's how it is in the SWAC, man. It's always the case, man. If you think you're just going to come and roll up on somebody, man, you in for a surprise, man. I've lived it. I've seen it. I remember that's same year we played Grambling on ESPN with Breon Rush, 3rd leading scorer in America. We beat them at home. We had no business winning that game. But they came in disrespectful because in that first game I told you when we almost fought. When they came back to the crib at the Hill, I was like, we got to get in their ass. And that's what we did. So
and I loved it. I was right there on the court. I was like, yeah, it's going down tonight.
Yeah.
In your eyes, y'all were ready to play. And boy, did I go home happy that night. It was a good time to be a Panther.
There you go, man. And it was on in the sweetest part, it was on ESPN too. So it's right there on Living Color. Got that butt.
They can't hide it.
They can't hide it. So and I say that to say that no matter how you may count somebody out, man, in this conference, man, you just never know with the right button get pressed, and you're gonna see somebody's most valiant effort that you don't assume. So don't count out your Texas Southern of the world. Don't count out your Valleys of the world. And I mean, no, Alcorn set the year out. Alcorn won the whole thing 2 years ago. So let's know, just don't be so caught up on Jackson State, because you're gonna see a lot of guys giving their best effort. And I want to end it with this, man. I don't know if you saw this, Kenyatta, that this I forget the sportscaster's name, but when Shador said what he said, that guys should go cheap shot him, basically, man. What's your opinion on that kind of stuff, man?
There's no room for that. The professionalism needs to be with you at all times. Obviously, we can joke and stuff like that, but that's not the thing that you joke about.
Absolutely.
Injuries to college players that are playing this game for our entertainment, and you talking about people being hurt, that's ridiculous. And for me, I have little time and substance for people like that. There's nothing.
Absolutely.
And I'll give you another occurrence of where I take umbrage with the media when they talked about Coach Prime and the fact that they lied and I'll say that right here, that he left the press conference. The first thing is that this individual did not even show up to the conference. He did a virtual interview, so he wouldn't know if he left or not. He left the interview, but when he left the interview, he went to the Radio Row, and there's a picture out there where he was sitting down with Charles Edmond on his next interview. The other thing that people didn't realize is when things started, he literally went around the room and introduced himself to each of the coaches and the players and tell them that he's excited about this year. So there's some things about Coach Prime that equals that what you see on one persona that you may not see if you're not in the living color and pictures and see how he is true about his care about HBCUs and the SWAC and intentional in terms of what he did. Even bigging up Mississippi Valley State in regards to saying that they have the same rights and privileges and people should be looking to make sure that they get their due in terms of their facility. So there's a lot of things. While certainly there's some things that we can pinpoint on Sanders that he needs to study more in regards to maybe the history of HBCUs and SWAC, or just in terms of some of the things that he may do. But I'm one of those individuals that looks at people very fair and open. So I'm going to look at both sides. We all have
absolutely
weaknesses. It is who we are as human individuals. So I just don't take a lot of umbrage with folks that waste a lot of air, bandwidth, time. And unfortunately, in this country and around the world, you know, those things will pay you. You can be ignorant, you can make ignorant comments, and you can make a lot of money off of it.
Absolutely.
People that don't truly have great skills, that's oftentimes what they do.
No, that's and it's called being a shock jock, basically. So you don't have a lot of substance, so you're playing off of the quick emotional aspect of things. And that's one thing on this channel, guys. I'm not gonna be that guy, man. I'm not gonna be a shock jock. I'm not gonna put out BS information just to get you to click on it, because why? You lose what's called journalistic integrity in the process. Basically meaning people view you as a clown. And so I just don't want to ever be seen as that kind of news outlet, media outlet, or however you want to shake that out. I'm just going to give you things the way I perceive it. Now, some of you may not agree with, some of you may think I've said it a little gruff, but just know it doesn't come from a place of me just saying something just so you can look at it and just so I can get a click, add revenue, what have you. So I'll never be that channel. I want to let you guys know that. I solemnly swear from Hoop Jargon, man. So, so I mean, we'll leave it there, man. Next time, I do want to delve a little more into the individual rosters of the East and the West of the SWAC. Maybe we can talk a little MEAC, man. Kenyatta, man, thank you so much for being on the show, man. My guy, man. I've been knowing this man since I was 21 years old, man. A5A all day. And you got anything to say before you peace out, Kenyatta?
No, I just want to say thank you to the followers and your listeners giving me this opportunity for checking out what I have to say. Check me out on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, DrKenyattCavil. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for giving me this opportunity, Brother Clifford Franks, in terms of what you're doing. I love it. Keep up the great work. It's fascinating, and you bring great content to the listeners out there.
Thank you very much, man. I never thought I'd be in this space, man, to do this, but, you know, time, energy, effort has put me in this space, man. I want to make sure I'm not selling my followers short, man. So till next time, Hoop Jargon, we are out.
Shout out to Hoop Jargon, man. I'm gonna add you to the crew, man. This crew called Hoop Jargon. They've been getting at it, man. They the ones that's gonna grill you, man, because they majority are all Houston people. So that's
shout out to Hoop Jargon.
Shout out to Hoop Jargon.